Chidasatarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta. So we had an interesting discussion on Monday. We're ending class. And it was precipitated by the question of not offending someone when you have a problem. I think that was the question, wasn't it? Tanya, you asked the question, wasn't it? Something about, what was the question? Is it an offense? If what? If somebody hurts us and we tell them, is it an offense if they get offended? Something like that? What was it? You can just speak it if you want.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So my question was, if a devotee, a senior devotee, is angry at us for pointing out something, is that an offense even though we didn't mean it as an offense?
Oh, okay. Yeah. That was such a good question. So we had a big discussion on that. And I think one thing I didn't explain was, obviously we can't control the emotions of other people. And sometimes you have the best intention and people misunderstand you and they become upset. And so that you are the cause of upsetting them, but your action wouldn't necessarily upset somebody else. So I would rephrase the question maybe, or ask additionally, are we held responsible karmically if we do the right thing, but it has the wrong result? And this would be an example, or an undesirable result, sometimes a child does what he's told, but there's some nuance to it that he wasn't told and he didn't know. And so it produces a bad result, but he did exactly what he was told, or she did exactly what she was told. Can you be held responsible? In karmic circles, you're not held responsible, or not much responsible, for what you don't know. And I've explained many times how Prabhupada said the Indians suffer more karmic consequences to things, breaking principles, because they know it's wrong. We grew up, we didn't know eating at McDonald's was wrong. They know it. I mean, it's in their sacred scripture. There's some consciousness there, that there's some rationale. They have to at least rationalize eating it because they know their tradition is against it. So the more you know, the more you're responsible for it. But if you don't know, then karmically there's less, or in some cases, no responsibility. So we have this story, which is an interesting story, in which a devotee was offended by something a devotee did that was not offensive. And so there was some reaction. And so you have to take a reaction because there was some offense, not a big reaction, but some reaction. That reaction could be in your own heart, in the relationship, and so forth. So you want to do what's in your power to rectify that reaction, but you were not at fault for creating the reaction, but you got the reaction. It's like you run over something in the street, you didn't put it there, you didn't see it. Now you got a flat tire, right? You ever run over a nail? Is that your fault? How could you run over that nail? What's wrong with you? Why don't you look where you're going? No, you ran over the nail, not really your fault, but there's a consequence, which is a flat tire, and you have to take care of it. So I think we would create quite a crazy culture if we said that you're responsible for every reaction that you created for doing the right thing. There are people, obviously, in the world who have issues with pure devotees because of what they preach. But what they preach is true. And Prabhupada said, well, that's, in some sense, that negative reaction is a sign that we're actually teaching the truth. So there are different ways to look at it. So yeah, he would upset people sometimes, and he knew that. And sometimes he did it on purpose because he wanted to make a point and stir up conversation. And sometimes gurus do that. But as a general principle, if you're doing the right thing and someone else doesn't like it, that's just something, that's just life, basically. And it's not good to have people in your life who are against you. It's not the best thing. But, and that's, you could say that's the karma for doing, sometimes you do the right thing and you get punished for it. And we have a saying like that in America. I forget how it goes, but it's something along the lines, you get punished for doing good deeds.
No good deed goes unpunished.
No good deed goes unpunished. Yeah. See, my English teacher there. Yeah. I have to hire Croatian for my English teacher. So, we always try to understand what is the right thing, and we always try to do it. And what happens after that, if there's some negative reaction, then I would think personally, did I actually do the right thing or did I do the wrong thing? And if I know I did the right thing, then was doing the right thing in that situation the wrong thing? You know, because sometimes you tell somebody the right thing, but they weren't ready for it. So, you know, you can reflect on that, right? I know what I did was the right thing, but as a result of doing the right thing, I was given a position of power, and I know that hurt somebody else. And in reflection, I think it's better that they had that position, and I should have probably not done it, you know, but you didn't really do the wrong thing. But contextually, it could have been considered wrong because the result was wrong. So that's up for you to reflect, because I don't know the situation, but that we can reflect on that. And in our course on conflict resolution, they said sometimes win-win is not the best way to resolve it. Sometimes avoiding is a better way to resolve it. You can't resolve a problem by avoiding, but sometimes the problem is so small, to put energy into it is a waste of time. It's just like, just forget it. You know, it's not a problem. I don't care. Just I don't want to talk about it. It's not a problem. So, you know, a lot of times that's a very bad way to solve a problem, because you're avoiding the issue and, you know, need to talk. But sometimes you don't really need to. It's not a big thing. It's just like, no, you just misunderstood. It's not a problem for me. Oh, really? Yeah, no. And sometimes just, you know, you have to come in and just say, this is wrong. There's no discussion. You know, I'm the authority here. You know, the house is on fire. Get out. Can we have a meeting about whether we should get out or not? You weren't very sensitive in the way you asked me. Get out of the house. You're going to die. It's burning down. You know? So, you know, this brings up such an important point, because if you know anything about hermeneutics, which I don't know a lot about, but hermeneutics is a way to understand things, that most of Shastric statements are not absolute statements. They're contextual. I mean, they're absolute, but they're not absolute in how they're applied. I'm not the body is, you know, how do you apply that? You know, there's not like a debate on it, you know. Krishna's God, how do you apply it? There's not a debate on application. But there are other aspects of philosophy which can be applied in many, many ways, differently in different contexts or cultures, or by men, by women. And your question brings that up. And the problem is a lot of people want to see just one answer. It's just like this. And it doesn't always work that way. So, you know, you have a theoretical philosophical answer. If you did the right thing, there's no karma. But you're going, well, there's no karma, but so-and-so hates me. So it seems like there was karma. Yeah, all right. Karma on that level, but not in a spiritual level, that you're going to be entangled in the world. You're going to have to come back because you did the right thing and somebody didn't like it. You know, not on that level, but on another level, relational level, people you're interacting with, there may be a reaction. So I always personally reflect, okay, did I do the right thing or did I do the wrong thing? And if I conclude, did I do the right thing? Then I ask, well, was it wrong to do the right thing at that time? Which sometimes, as strange as it sounds, it could be. You did the right thing by doing this service, but the fact that you did that service, actually, you ended up taking it away from somebody else, less competent, but maybe someone who really needed to do that. And you realize that it hurt them, and you think that was the wrong thing. I did the right thing, but it was the wrong thing to do the right thing. Or sometimes you have to say, for the sake of Prabhupada's movement, I will have to do did I just freeze? Or no. So or sometimes for the sake of Prabhupada's movement, you might say, I have to do the wrong thing, even though it's going to hurt somebody, because the consequence of not doing it would be more harmful than the consequence of doing it. So, these are like moral judgments, right? But my bottom line is, first, what is the right thing shastrically? And then from that, you can analyze, okay, morally, relationally, etc. Just because it's right doesn't mean that saying it is the best thing, or saying it to this person is the best thing. I've regretted saying the right thing to some people. It was so right, they couldn't deal with it. And so Mark Twain said, it's much easier to get people to believe a lie than get people to believe the truth. Because the truth, it hurts. Lies are like warm and fuzzy. Hey, you're all wonderful. You're all great. Everything you do is fantastic. I love you all. It's like, oh, I feel so good. You actually have this problem. What do you mean? I don't have that problem. Who do you think you are to tell me? Like, you're going to die. Don't tell me that. I don't want to hear it. That's not warm and fuzzy. Actually, this politician is not like as warm and fuzzy and great as you think. Oh, no, yes, he is. I don't, Do you realize that a lot of what we believe is not true? It's just the way we want it to be, so we believe it. Did you know that? Psychology is dangerous, because when you start understanding how your mind works, it's like you realize how many bad judgments you could make in a second. How do you know karma is true? Well, if I ask you that, you say, well, it's in the Bhagavad Gita. But aside from that, you probably already believed it before you read Bhagavad Gita, or you had some inclination for it. Why? Because it made sense to you. Because you don't want to see a world where Hitler is not getting punished, right? If you live in a world where Hitler gets off scot-free, like, I don't believe that God would create a world like that. It's not fair, right? So you believe it because that's the way you want to see the world. That's the way that resonates with you. And then it becomes, in your head, intellectualized as a philosophy. And you can give all the reasons why it's true. But actually, it was your belief that you wanted to be that way, that where it started, which is really interesting, because you think, no, it's true because this. And the smarter you are, the more logical arguments you're going to have, and the better the arguments. But you were actually already convinced before you had the argument. And so an atheist, like, he's got so many arguments against the existence of God. And those arguments came after the belief, the emotion, the feeling that there's no God, there can't be a God, like he was born like, a lot of the atheists were out of the womb, they were like that. Did you know that? They came out atheist. And now they get their university education and they have all the arguments. And we as theists listen to those arguments and think, oh, this is the stupidest argument I've ever heard of. Can you believe this guy? He's got a PhD, he's a writer, he's respected, and he believes this? You ever have that experience? It's like, I can't believe you just said that. That is the stupidest thing. Even a 5-year-old wouldn't say that. And all these other people are going, yeah, great. Why are they clapping? Because he just killed God, and they all want to kill God because that's the way they think. And then they go to the academy and intellectualize all of it. Isn't it? That is a sad truth, I'm afraid to say. Now we have a problem. My computer needs to be plugged in. I'm going to have to place it somewhere else. We may never even get to read what I wanted to read the way we're going. Okay, so now we have questions. So that's kind of, I guess that's a sequel to where we left off yesterday. And as I said, I wouldn't want to be part of a movement who tells people that you do your best and it's wrong because somebody didn't like it. And for me personally, and you probably all understand this, but we all don't necessarily follow it so well. When you do your best and somebody doesn't like it, it can really throw you off your game, can it? And you can get very discouraged. You can become quite discouraged. But how can you do better than your best? How can, and you did your best and you did it sincerely. How can you do any better than that? And people don't like it. Okay, so, I can try to be more sincere. I can try to do better. I can try to understand if there's validity to what they don't like about it. But oftentimes it's just personal taste. They just don't like it. That's their taste. It has nothing to do with what you did. It's just, they don't like that song that you wrote. What can you do? You like it. Other people like it. It was the best song you ever wrote. And half the population is going to think that song is horrible. Or I guess there's some statistics that a certain percentage of people will not even like the best song ever written. There's one song out there. Oh my God, it's got like 1 billion or 2 billion hits. It's got like, I think it's 2 billion hits. I just came across it by accident. Actually, my daughter showed it to me once. 2 billion hits. That's like 1/4 of the world likes that song. 1/4 of the world has heard that song. Well, some people listen to it more than once, but do you think everybody likes that song? Is the person who wrote that song going home crying and not everyone likes my song? No, he's laughing all the way to the bank. Well, he doesn't care that people don't like it, right? So sometimes we become controlled by the appreciation of others or the judgments of others and so on. And sometimes that's actually healthy because we need that feedback. We need that improvement. But sometimes it's very unhealthy because we're not really doing anything wrong. We're just doing, maybe we're doing something wrong because we have some, like yesterday, this devotee wanted me to sing a song, a Bengali song, and he gave a part of a note higher than I've ever sung. It was like, no, it was higher than that. So I'm sitting there for like 10 minutes trying to get it, and I finally get it. And I could only sing it falsetto. And he writes me back. He says, no, I don't want it falsetto. I wanted you to sing it in your head. And I go, I can't. It's not, this body can't do that. Maybe if I went to a vocal coach, I could, but it's like, that's so high. And after 10 minutes, I got lucky a couple of times and actually got it. So I go, and then I tried to do it better and I couldn't. And he said, can you do it better? And I tried last night. Maybe I was tired. I was like, I can't. So it's like, I can't do any better than that. And I have to tell myself, this is the best I could do. This body, these vocal cords, past some scars, whatever. I'm not Celine Dion. She could do it, no problem. Right? So that's how you have to treat yourself. It's like if you do your best and you're sincere and other people don't like it, it's just like, okay, well, I'm sorry you don't like it, but I have to know within my heart that I did my best. Yeah. And if you don't like it and there's some constructive feedback that I can improve with, sure, well, I should listen to it, but I shouldn't, berate myself because you don't like me, because then, it's a balance. We want to please the Vaishnavas. We want to improve. We want to hear how we can improve. At the same time, there are people who will just give negative feedback because that's what they do. That's what, lights their, what is it? Lights their candle, turns them on, right? Do you know there are some people who live to be offended? They go online and they read things and find what offends them and get all fired up and then respond. And that's what they live for. They live to be offended. Isn't it? Like now we have a Democratic president in the United States. So all the conservatives just live to find out all the bad things he's doing. even when they're not bad things. They'll make them bad because that's what they live for, right? So, I decided long ago that's probably not a good way to live. I could utilize my life doing better things and looking at how to get offended, and put my energy into better things like appreciating, and focusing on positive things. So there are those people who will, no matter what you do, if you say black, they'll say white, and you'll go, okay, white, then they'll say black. I say, well, I don't agree with you always. In this case, it's black. What are you going to do? You get depressed about it and beat yourself up. So there's a balance there. We want to please devotees. We want to get feedback, but we also want to understand there are people out there who don't have our interest in mind other than just putting us down and indirectly discouraging us. And I've always found that the best thing for our own enthusiasm is to recognize in this situation, I did my best, because that encourages you to continue to do your best. And I told this story once. It's such an amazing story, but I'll preface this story by asking you a question. Has anyone ever come up to you and told you, 478 years ago, you told me this and that changed my life? Or, 8,300 years ago, I'm exaggerating, they say like, well, 6 years ago, I met you and you said this one thing to me and that has changed the course of my life. And you're like, really? What did I say? And they tell you, I said that? I go, they say, yeah, that changed my life. I go, okay. Like, you don't even remember you said it. You don't even remember the person, right? Or you just did something, when I saw you, and you did that kirtan, that actually became a devotee. I've had people tell me that, it was, I heard this lecture and I became a devotee. I was at this, confluence of doubt and this and that. And they tell you like 10 years later, like, well, thanks for telling me, if you would have told me 10 years ago, I might be a little more enthusiastic now that, like I gave up giving lectures because no one said they liked it, Has that ever happened to you? If it hasn't happened to you, all I can say is it is happening. It's just they haven't told you yet because they don't always tell you. So here's my classic story. Some of you have heard this story. So I was in a temple in San Diego and I helped one young woman become a devotee, or she hadn't moved into the temple, and she was becoming a devotee. Eventually she moved in the temple, but I was preaching in the congregation. She was in the congregation. So I had helped her on the path of becoming a devotee. And so at this point she was a devotee. She came to the temple and somehow or other ended up speaking to her at the Sunday feast about ghosts, how you become a ghost. And Prabhupada said ghosts, this may not be the only way to become a ghost. I don't want to give you any ideas. Don't become a ghost. It's not fun. It's like wanting to do something in your mind, but you don't have a body that can do it. That would be frustrating, wouldn't it? Like, I want to go surfing, but I don't have a body. I want to eat that donut. Well, sorry, you don't have a body, but it looks good. Sorry. So I don't know why we're talking about it. And I said, well, if you commit suicide, you become a ghost. That's what Prabhupada said. Right? Just some random conversation about ghosts, like bona fide devotees. They always, you're not a bona fide devotee if you haven't spoken about ghosts, right? What makes you a bona fide devotee? The 10 things to make you, if you haven't talked about digestion and what's good for digestion, you're not a bona fide devotee, right? Isn't it? Like my sister, she'd go to the temple, we'd take Mahaprasadam, and she lived near there. Every time I'd go to Los Angeles, she'd come. And she said, you devotees, why are you always talking about digestion? Because we eat 3 times more than anybody else. What else are we going to talk about? When you eat 3 times too much, you have to talk about how to digest it all, right? So we had a bona fide devotee conversation about ghosts. I'll have to come up with my list of top 10 ways to know you're a bona fide devotee, right? And so one is you talk about ghosts. Two is you talk about digestion. Anyway, you can send me in your recommendations, bona fide devotee. And if you don't do these things, 10 things, you're not going to be able to get initiated. So this was, I don't know when this was, in the 90s. It must, no, I never went. It had to be in the late 80s because I left that temple. Yeah, I left that temple in like the 89 and I never came back. So then about 15 years ago, so we go back to, let's say 2005. So let's say it's been 10 years, right? And we're at a seminar. It's not my seminar. We're at a seminar given by a devotee. And a lot of part of the seminar is being a little more vulnerable, opening up, talking. So we're like, there's a break or we're taking prasadam. She said, I have to tell you something I never told you. I go, okay. Said, do you remember that time I came to the temple Sunday feast? And, somehow I remembered the conversation, or she reminded me that I remembered. We were talking about ghosts. And you become a ghost if you kill yourself. I said, yeah. What about it? She said, well, actually, that day I planned to kill myself. And I thought, well, before I kill myself, at least, it's Sunday feast time. I should come to the temple, before I do it. And we talked about ghosts and suicide and this and that. And because of that conversation, I'm still here. And I said, oh, thanks for telling me 10 years later. It would have been nice to know 10 years ago. So they're the most outspoken people are the ones who don't like us, isn't it? Like 10 to 1 or 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1. The ones that like you, sometimes they just like you and they appreciate you, and they feel like, well, the fact that I appreciate you is good enough. I don't have to say it, isn't it? You ever do that with someone? You just, well, why did you ever appreciate me? I appreciate you at every moment. Well, you never tell me. Well, but I do. How am I supposed to know? That look on your face makes me think you don't like me. So, yeah. Okay. So I think that's important to recognize that if you're doing your best sincerely, even if you let some people down, there are others who will appreciate it. And of course, you can always do better, right? And a lot of us have so much to offer and so much to give, and so many people will benefit from it, but we don't know it. And we just hear the ones that are like, that class was okay. That prasadam was all right. It's not up to my standard, but anyway, you tried, you ever think about doing something outside the kitchen, like cleaning toilets or something? Those are the most vocal people, right? And so if we listen to that, we could ruin our career as being one of the best cooks in ISKCON, because actually they didn't like it, but that was the first thing I ever cooked in my life. So, some people liked it. That's pretty good. At least you're the only one who complained. Sometimes that's a good, if nobody complains, that means a lot of people like it, right? So that's important because we have service to do, and there's the world's waiting for you to manifest, isn't it? To manifest your skills and talents. And so if you let other people, their opinions affect you, that could ruin your whole career. It's possible. I'm sure there are many people who are not doing what they should be or could be because somebody told them, you're not good. And it's interesting because if some people say you're not good, their reaction is, yeah, well, I'll show you. And they go out and become famous because, their grandmother said you're a bum. And they want to prove her wrong. So they go out and, get 3 PhDs, 100 TED Talks, and make $1 million every day, things like that. It's true. People do that. So I think that's quite extreme, but at least they didn't allow someone to discourage them or, pour water on the fire of their dream. And certainly Prabhupada didn't do that. He was quite the opposite. Okay. So, so the conclusion of that question is, if you do the right thing, it's okay. I'm going to say something really profound to all of you. Fasten your seatbelt for this. This is going to be like the deepest thing you've ever heard in your life. Are you ready for this? Words of wisdom. If you do the right thing, it's the right thing. Hare Krishna. I know that was deep, right? Our culture is so messed up that if you just say something like common sense, duh, people will say, wow, deep. If you do the right thing, it's the right thing. Yeah, deep, deep, Prabhu. That's deep. Yeah. Tell that to a 5-year-old, they'll be like, what are you talking about? Of course, right? Maybe we should let 5-year-olds give class. You know, they haven't been like polluted so much yet. Right? So, ladies and gentlemen, if you do the right thing, it's the right thing. The only question is sometimes you don't know it's the right thing. That's another problem. But if you do the right thing, you should know it's the right thing. Because why? Another profound statement. Because it is. How do I know it's the right thing? Because it is. Because you know, you've been told, you've learned this is the right thing and you're doing it. And then I think we also talked about intuition, didn't we, Tanya? Did we talk something about, you know, using common sense and intuition in some situations? Because part of the answer to your question was a bit of common sense, like, you know, well, he's offended, but I did the right thing. So like, can I do anything else? Could have, you know, you could apologize. I'm sorry, you know, that what I said hurt you. Now, there's so many things, but it is a fact that some people will be offended by whatever you do. So, you know, to worry about those people would be a waste of your human form of life, I think. Now, you know, we're very worried about pleasing Prabhupada, very worried about pleasing our spiritual master and like that. But they're also not tyrants that you have to worry, you know, you have to stay up all night. I got up at 4:01. Was my spiritual master displeased with me? You know, like you can take it to extremes. And so we, you know, yeah, well, he wants us to get up early. Yeah. I didn't get up early today. I don't think he's like really upset with me and like my life is ruined. So, but I'm concerned because he asked me to do this. I'm not doing it well. Yes, I want to do it better. So I think that's part of being grounded in common sense. And, you know, in spiritual circles, we could lose that equilibrium sometimes in our effort to want to be better than want to be better, right? So, you know, there's a balance between wanting to be better and doing your best and not allowing yourself to degrade, to just make excuses. So there's a balance there. And so I personally have found great solace in looking at a situation, whether it went well or mediocre or not well, and just asking myself, were you sincere about this? And did you try your best? And if the answer is yes, there's always encouragement that comes from that. We can't rationalize making a huge mistake. Like, you know, you did something and you offended the deities or something like that. I'm not saying that. It's not a universal panacea to rationalize. But in general, the process of devotional service, because it's based on sincerity and devotion. Did you do it with devotion? Did you do it sincerely? Did you try to follow the instructions you were given? Yes, yes, yes. You checked the boxes. Okay. Congratulations, Tanya. You're not going to hell. You can sleep well tonight. You don't have to worry. Yeah. Now, if you become a Baptist, you might have dreams about hell because they'll definitely let you know that you're going there. on a fast train, one-way ticket, right? I think Sydney's been there, done that. She's from Texas, so she knows. What's your religion? I'm a recovering Baptist. I'm in therapy, you know. I was told when I was 3 years old I was going to hell. What for? Because I ate a lollipop, you know, after 10 o'clock at night. My parents said not to. Definitely a good reason to go to hell. I've never really understood how God can be loving and send you to hell at the same time. That one is, I'm still working on it. I don't know if in this lifetime I'll ever understand it. But it's really given religion a bad name to say these things. You know, we have to be so careful in how you understand spiritual philosophy and articulate it. You know. Tanya just gets in an accident. She calls me, "There's an accident." Wow, Tanya, you got really bad karma. Tough luck for you. You know, you must have been really sinful in your last life. And give her a whole philosophical answer, you know. Here, let me give you a few shlokas to help you. No, but I cracked my neck. All right, you take care of that later. Here's the shloka, you know. You should think it's Krishna's mercy, you know, you only cracked your neck, you know, he reduced the karma, you know. So that philosophy, you know, she'll be okay with that philosophy in 3 months. But right now, that's not what you have to tell her, right? You know, the typical man, you know, the wife calls up, I just got an accident. How's the car? Is the car okay? You know, it doesn't ask about her. You know, I hope you don't marry a guy like that. But they're out there, definitely. There are plenty of them, you know. The odds are you probably might get one if you're not careful. So be careful. Before you get married, say, if we buy a brand new car and I total it and I call you up, what's the first thing you're going to say? No, I won't. Don't tell him you totaled the car. I got in an accident, a bad accident. What's the first thing you're going to say? And if he says, the first thing I would say is, how are you? You go, okay, I'll marry you. You're good. If he says, the first thing I would say is, how was the car? I say, see you later, buddy. Nice knowing you. Yeah. The test of who to marry. Just ask this one question. Hare Krishna. Okay. I better stop talking. Otherwise, we'll never get to, you know, the reason I talk about these things is because we're coming from a culture which is very tamasic and rajasic and not Vedic. And we're going to a culture which is obviously Vedic and Sattvic, and it's confusing sometimes how to adapt to it, because not everything in our culture is bad and not everything Vedic is good, because what we say to be Vedic may be good 100 billion years ago, but not good right now. Or we may conflate Vedic and Indian, and there may be something Indian that's not really good for us. Or as Westerners, there's no place in our brain for it, so it doesn't work. So we make adjustments. So it's not like we give up our rational mind. And it's not like we just say, well, I'm Westerner, I can't follow anything Vedic. It's, you know, you have to learn how to do it well. And so a lot of times I see it's really a challenge, especially in your early years of Krishna consciousness. And then you can lose your identity because you're trying to throw your identity into self-realized pure devotee. And then, you know, after 10 years, you go, oh, that didn't work. You know, like, yeah, I'm lifetimes away from that, but I thought I was going to get it in like 3 years. And then you start realizing, well, actually, I'm not really as renounced as I pretended, or not pretended, but that I thought I could be, or I was. And so you start adapting and you go, well, you know, I actually had a epiphany today. Yeah, what was it, Prabhu? The epiphany was I like pizza better than chapatis. You know, it took me 10 years to like confront that reality. I felt so guilty but I finally admitted it, you know, like stuff like that, right? Well, Prabhu, if you put tomatoes, you can put tomatoes and cheese on your chapati, and that has to be a good compromise. Then you don't have to feel so guilty because it's still Vedic pizza, right? I had a joke the other day. It was so funny. You know, I can't remember what it was, but it was like, what's the Vedic way to do something really bad? Like as if there's a Vedic way to do something. You know, I had to kill this person. What's the Vedic way to do it? You know. So, you know, there's like all these confusions when you're a young devotee, and you kind of go into some kind of denial because you look at everything that you were brought up with as must be bad, when in fact, the only thing that's bad is anything disconnected from Krishna, well, not the only thing bad, but in general, it's bad because it's disconnected. You haven't seen how to use it. And okay, you have conditioning. We're all, most of us here are Westerners. And so we're trying to learn how to use that conditioning in Krishna consciousness, right? We do so many things that aren't Vedic, but we're learning, and we're learning what's important and what isn't important. And, sometimes in trying to be Krishna conscious, we kind of lose touch with some aspects of ourself and aspects of reality. And so it's not healthy. So I think self-acceptance is I think self-acceptance, it helps deal with that problem. Like, okay, this is the ideal way up here. This is who I am. This is who I was born. I'm this person. I want to be here. And even if I come up to here, it may not look exactly like I think it's going to look when I get there. It may. I will adapt it for myself with my psychophysio nature, my cultural upbringing, and so forth. So, in life, you can always err on extremes. Like all Western culture is bad and all Vedic culture is good. There are good things in Western culture. There are good things in Vedic culture. There's things in Vedic culture which we would, if we applied, we'd end up in prison. And of course, there's bad things in Western culture. And there's bad things that can be made good, and good things in Vedic culture that can be made bad, right? So it's important to, I would say, if you're asking, well, like how do I deal with this? I would say one word is relax a little bit, and don't be afraid to be you. Because another profound statement, get ready for this one, you are you. I know that's deep. But you are. And you can't get around being you, right? Did you ever think like that you are you? And I think what a lot of devotees are trying to do in their early days of Krishna consciousness is not be them, because they didn't like the them. That's why they became devotees, to get rid of that them. And they have to confront someday that them is still who they are. It's just being now used in Krishna service. And there are obviously stumbling blocks to being us, which we're trying to purify, but we are who we are. You are you, the big mantra of the day. What did Mahatma Prabhu say in class? He said, you are you, I am I. Really? Huh? You spent an hour just to get that? Are you kidding me? You must have been wasting your time. I said, no, it was the deepest thing it's totally changed my life. I am me. That was life-changing, right? Another deep, profound truth given today at no extra cost to you. Yeah. So, but the fact is, you are you, and that is the you that you're trying to execute Krishna consciousness with. And you get feedback all the time of who you are. And so a lot of times we don't like that. So we try to deny that we are and be a pure devotee and kind of walk around like I'm not actually me. I'm actually much better than me. And one day you find that much better than you is actually you. And on that happy day, you can finally say, you've got sat. Sat is reality. Have you got, there used to, got bliss, got milk, got sat. On that day, you've got real. Get real. You say that in Croatia? Get real, Prabhu. Get real. Get sat. You need more sat, Prabhu. Get real. This is who you are. So it's like, no, that I don't want to be that me, because that me is bad. No, that me is not bad. That me is only bad if you don't use it for Krishna. If you use it for Krishna, then that me is it's just what it is. It's not good or bad. It's just, why do you have to judge it? It's just what it is. If they use it for Krishna, and then that will get better, right? That me gets better by using it for Krishna. But now it's judging it's good or bad, obviously we have anarthas and like that. We have to evaluate these things. But the problem is, okay, I have all these anarthas. I've got, tons. I can make a list and mail them to you if you want to see them, right? We all have our list, right? Okay. But, the real question is, in spite of that, okay, you have these anarthas, but what are you doing? So, well, I'm getting up, I'm chanting my rounds like good, 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 right? So if you want to make judgments based on your anarthas, you can totally discourage yourself. But the fact is, we all have anarthas, but we're all going on. So it's just what it is. That's just the reality of being a sadhana bhakta. You go on with anarthas, and the anarthas gradually minimize as you go on. But you are you. You don't give in to the you when the you is going to degrade you, but you acknowledge it, that there are limitations. And then, as we've been talking about previously, what does it mean to be a pure devotee? That you're in a pure devotional university, so to speak, and you follow the rules of the university, and you're engaged in pure devotional service, even though you're not pure devotee, you are a pure devotee. So what, what more do you want than that? Like, I'm totally nothing. I get mercy, and I'm given a process of pure devotional service, and Srila Prabhupada calls me a pure devotee. And you're like, but I'm so bad, I'm so this, I'm so that. No. Prabhupada is certified, this is pure devotional service, and you're engaged in it. So, why do you have to judge yourself based on all your anarthas? So that's where the problem comes. I have all these anarthas, but still I'm engaged in devotional service, but then I judge myself, but I'm bad. No, that's the huge mistake. Huge mistake. But I'm bad because I have all these anarthas. I have all these anarthas. Just end it there. And I'm working on them. You don't have to judge anything. When you start judging, then you go crazy. I have all these anarthas, and I'm engaging in Krishna's service by his mercy. Everything is good. Right? So, the way the mind works. It's so interesting. The mind has no idea what's right and wrong, what's real, subjective, objective. The mind only knows what you feed it, right? So if you feed the mind that, okay, you have all these anarthas, therefore the conclusion is just be determined, go on, don't give energy to them, be sincere and so forth, and you'll be fine. Give that to your mind, and your mind's like, okay, sounds good to me. Let's go. Let's do some bhakti. Let's get up, Mangal Arti, I have all these anarthas and this and that. This is who I am. And the mind says, and you feed the mind, yeah, that means you're a useless bum. And then the next morning, it's like, why should I get out of bed? I'm a useless bum. So what has changed existentially? Absolutely nothing. The only thing that's changed is what we've fed the mind, because the mind doesn't know the difference. So what you feed the mind becomes reality. So now that's your reality. And as you may know, without having to go to Psychology 101, whatever you identify to be you is how you will act. So if you're a useless bum, you are guaranteed to act like one, because that's just the way it works. If you're like, I'm an aspiring pure devotee engaged in pure devotional service, one who has anarthas, but that's par for the course, but in spite of them, I still engage in pure devotional service, then with that conception, you're doing quite well, isn't it? So that's the trick of the mind. And it's like, well, you say, but what if I feed my mind this idea, and it's not really true. Well, who said it's not true? As soon as you decide what's true or not, that's what you feed your mind, and your mind goes, this is true. And then you've given the mind the map of where to go, right? I'm bad, I'm useless, I'm this and that. That's the mind the map you've given to your mind. So your mind just carries out the order, and then you don't want to get up in the morning and see anybody, and you stop chanting your rounds and write down your 108 excuses why you're not doing this. Where you feed your mind, be compassionate on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. This is normal, the condition I'm in. I'm a conditioned soul, but I'm trying to be Krishna conscious. I have to be real, honest like that. Feed that to your mind, then you're like, oh, okay, let's get up and do devotional service. Sounds fine to me, right? And nothing changed except the conception you fed your mind. That's crazy, isn't it? When you think about it, that the difference between, enthusiasm and depression, spiritually, I'm not talking about clinical depression, which may have other causes, but spiritual, what could be causing a spiritual depression is simply conceptions you fed your mind. that your mind objectified as reality, because that's what the mind does. Whatever you feed it, the mind says that's real. So if I say, Christe, you could do this. And she says, no, I could never do it. I go, just try it. You can do it. Believe me, I know you well enough that you can do this. She says, really? You think I could do it? I go, yeah, you can do it. She's like, okay, if you say so. And then she goes out and does it. And then she says, I never thought I could do that, but you convinced me I could. So what I did, I reframed her identity that she's someone who could do that. Actually, I was trying to do that last night, singing that. I know, but I told myself I could do it, but I couldn't. I'm doing it better now, though. Maybe I have to go back in my studio after class. This note was so high. Oh, it was actually higher than that. I think it was crazy. I said, you can do it. Celine Dion will empower you. Don't stop. I still couldn't do it. So obviously, I can't jump to the moon. So I'm not saying that, you just think you can jump to the moon and like, wow, hey, I'm going to join the Olympics boxing match, like I can do it. That's all you need. No practice. In 3 seconds, you're knocked out. So we're not talking about that, but we're talking about the power of getting seeds in your mind of proper conception, because the mind turns it into reality. And then if it's a reality, you can do that. And anything you do well, you're not mental about it. You couldn't do it if you didn't have confidence, right? You could do it, isn't it? You have to have some confidence, even though you may be nervous. I can do this, right? So you see that in sports all the time, people doing daredevil, things like in their mind, they know they can do it. They're confident. Otherwise they wouldn't try it. So, understanding the nature of the mind and how it works is extremely important. And it's also so interesting. What I find, one of the most interesting things I find in my position, especially as someone who has to guide devotees on a one-on-one basis, is how so many devotees have conceptions or doubts or self-identities. We have many self-identities. I am, and it's just fill in the blank. I am rich, I'm poor, I'm smart, I'm stupid, I am fat, I'm thin, I am talented, I'm not talented. We have so many identities. And so often devotees will come with a problem with an identity that is totally contradictory to what Prabhupada teaches in his books. And that's amazing to see. It's like, where did you get that? That's not on any, you can't find that anywhere in Prabhupada's books. In fact, you find the opposite. How did you get that? So obviously, it's an identity that was brought in to the Hare Krishna movement and stayed. And even though hearing again and again, that's not your identity, it hasn't changed. That's really interesting, isn't it? And scary and concerning. And so I always encourage the devotees, when Prabhupada's saying something, take it deeply in your heart, because otherwise your conditioning will override it. And even though he's saying it, you can't benefit from it because your conditioning says, yeah, that might be true, but not about me. You ever said that? Yeah, that's for other devotees. As far as I'm concerned, I get the award for America's Biggest Loser. Actually a show called America's Biggest Loser. It's how much weight you can lose. So, that's another. I've never seen it, but I've heard about it. I've seen the commercials for it. That's how I know. I'm innocent, ladies and gentlemen. I don't watch that show. Don't worry that I'm falling into I just saw the commercial. As you know, when you're on YouTube looking at things, you have to look at commercials. So isn't that interesting? How, so as you know, because you've heard me give so many classes, I always tell you, whatever Prabhupada's saying, that should become your reality. And so many times our conditioned reality overrides what he says. That is a travesty. That is so unfortunate. And so I don't know how to describe it. It's just, it's unfortunate if that happens. So I don't think we got to any questions today. And we're not going to get to them till Monday.
Saved all of them.
Yeah, everything will be saved. And we have, if I start on, well, I can just read this. This is a question from Gabriella from, I think last week you asked, on Monday you asked. How can we deal with the situation when we have to make service with people that are constantly offending or criticizing others, and they are not aware of it or doesn't have the capacity to self-observe, and we feel that toxic energy? How to maintain equanimity? Well, there's two ways to answer your question. One way is, can it be resolved through some means of resolution? And the other question is, how do I deal with it? And sorry to say that there's not a good way to deal with it, because if you hear offense, if you hear a devotee being offended, you will be affected by it. It's like in my job, I have to take cyanide. How do I deal with it? I think by death is the only way you're going to deal with it. So hearing offense of other devotees is like cyanide in your ear, and it can kill your spiritual life. So the only way Shastra says to deal with it is to, if you're a Kshatriya, get a knife and cut out their tongue because they won't be able to offend anymore, right? They can't make any offenses. Maybe a more sattvic way of doing that is duct tape on their mouth. Excuse me, Prabhu. I just duct taped your mouth because I'm sick of hearing all your offenses. Of course, that's probably not going to go over well, right? Unless they're your friends and you're joking with them. So Shastra says 3 things. If you're a Kshatriya, cut out their tongue. I don't recommend that. That could create more problems than it solves. Go away, which is the path of least resistance. But if you have to cook the offering and they're in the kitchen, you can't go away. Or you could pick them up if you're strong and throw them out the door and lock the door. Or talk to them, convince them to stop it. And the third one, to convince them how to stop it, may require some form of mediation or conflict resolution or experience and so forth. So I would say it's some way in, we're taking a conflict resolution course, right? And one of the ways you resolve conflict, that they have a saying in the corporate world: let everybody swim in their own lane. Like, it's just like, okay, I can't work in the kitchen when he's there. I gotta go in the DD room when he's in the kitchen because I can't hear him. Like, so that might be the resolution: find your own lane, or he or she finds her own lane. But if it is a serious issue, then it needs to be discussed, because you may not be the only one affected by it. And when others are affected by it, we want to do something. Okay. On that happy note, it's time to chant japa. Hare Krishna. Okay. Welcome to all the